Right, let's jump into this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi guys, and welcome to GeeK Talk, where we talk deep and geek about pianos, keyboards, and synthesizers. And I have a very special guest today, who is someone who you've probably never heard of, but I'm going to explain to you why now. I think he is so sort of unheard of, but he deserves a much bigger platform than he currently has. My guest today, Mr. John Oram. John, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm great, thank you. I'm great to be here. I'm very pleased. If you haven't heard of me, it's because I'm too old and you're probably too young. But okay, we'll get over that.
No, that's fine, John. Obviously, I was introduced to you through our mutual friend, Dean Murphy.
Yep.
And when Dean contacted me and spoke to me about you, he said that, I should interview you, and, he just wanted me to meet you. And when he sent me the links, first of all, he said, have you heard of John Oram? And I said, no, I haven't. Then he sent me all the links to everything you've done. And the first thing I said to Dean was, he's kind of like Rupert Neve in his own way, So how do you feel about that?
I have to explain, I was in the professional audio business. I was with various people, but the principal time was spent with Trident Audio developments, and I was very much a backroom boy there. Okay, my time was in design, creation, not just circuitry, but making the sound that Trident became famous for. And I was very happy at that time to be in a backroom situation. And obviously I knew Rupert, we knew each other well. I respect him and regret his passing recently. But I mean, the fact is he had a great methodology and a technique, which was quite different to mine. I mean, I'm a musician. I don't think he was. And I think that makes a difference as a designer. I think it's important that if you are going to create musical products, particularly electronic ones, you should know all about them, And so, yeah, I mean, when I came out of the back room, I was running my own company, Oram, and then Trident went down, and I subsequently bought the company back, and I owned it then for 10 years. So during that time, obviously, there was a lot of people that I'd already met. There was a lot of very satisfied users. My interest has always been with the end user, and a lot of those end users in the original Trident company knew there was somebody in the back room creating this stuff. Our front man at the time was Malcolm Toft, who got a lot of publicity, but Malcolm was essentially a salesman, but he was also a good systems designer. And he and we worked together very closely. He would come up with front panel drawings and specifications, semi-technical, and it was my job to interpret them and turn them into products.
Sorry, I'm just saying, in the words of Dean Murphy, he just said you're obviously a design genius because you've built consoles. Could you just tell us some of your sort of you've got the 500 series? I'm just looking at your website now, and
okay, I mean, my personal design brief for my company was to create consoles, to create rack equipment, and to cover the whole industry. And of course, but one of my principal drivers has always been to listen to musicians, producers, engineers, and find out what it is they really want. Now, I've always had my own studio. In fact, my first studio I built when I was 15 in 1964, and there's pictures online, I think, showing those original things. And it's only by wanting to do these things that gives you the result, that you need to go for. So my product line, it's extended. I mean, I designed the Trident FlexiMix, and then the Trident TSM, and then the Series 80 became a derivation of that, which I think became the world's biggest selling rock and roll board at the time. And a lot of this was early, late 60s, early 70s. and I don't know how I stopped that. I've got these things coming up.
Oh, don't.
Yeah, late 60s and 70s, and at that time, I mean, we didn't have SSL, and Neve was there, but Neve was making more of a broadcast console than he was a music board, and it was only guys that were good. I mean, the thing about consoles is they need to be reliable.
Yes.
And the one word I would add to any Neve product is reliability, because he had a great concept in his mind about how do you put across a given sound or system, but it was always very repeatable, very accurately designed. So great. And likewise with my stuff, I wanted the same, but I didn't want what Rupert was given. Rupert was given an optimum technical spec. I wanted to give an optimum technical spec and a musical spec. And the reason for that is that, you know, musically we have subjective tastes. There are things in our minds that we know we want to hear. When we hear them, we love them. Can we objectively turn those subjective feelings into circuits? Is not always possible, but it is something that I've pioneered, I think, and got through. So, and I've never been bothered about whether I'm known by everybody, because the people that do know me are pretty well top guys. You know, I've got a lot of good endorsees who love my stuff, and they buy it. I mean, I don't give it to them. I'm not into that. It's not my scene. If you like what I've done and you can afford it, buy it. If you like what I've done and you can't afford it, you got to talk to me, because we might be able to cut you a deal.
Well, I'm just looking at that screens, the screensaver you've got behind us. Tell us what desk that is. That's one of yours.
Yep, that's what I call my flagship. It's called a Pro 80. The significance of the word 80 is because it's a combination console. It's a state-of-the-art board that has input channels that are all 5.1 ready, and they function in that mode. So for a surround sound, they're there, but incorporated in them, and just over my shoulder, you'll see some are light blue, but some there are in black.
Yes.
And the black ones are actual Trident Series 80 modules, but modified to give 5.1 surround, which of course wasn't around when we did the 80, but it's the same mic pre, transformer coupled, same EQ. And these Trident modules plug into the Oram frame alongside Oram modules. So there's a lot of customers out there with them who said, I can't make up my mind. I love the sound of the Series 80, which was created around 1978. And then I love the sound of the Oram, which was 20 years later and in 98. And you have to take on board the fact that over that 20-year period, there were substantial changes in components that were available. And so the Oram modules are not transformer mic pre's, they're transformer-less, but they're with the latest state-of-the-art semiconductors. I worked to develop them with a company called Analog Devices in the States, and we came up with this great new component, a new operational amplifier, or chip as it's often called, and that chip was the basis of the mic pre, and I use it now in every product I sell. So although the board behind me would cost you close on in pounds, 175,000 pounds, say 200,000 US dollars. Although it costs that, you get the same mic pre if you buy a 500 series module that I can sell you for 450 pounds. So it's identical sound, and so it is a monster, but it's a beautiful board. It's got 48 channels on this one, and each channel has a 100mm fader and a 60mm fader, so you can mix 96 channels, and then you've got a further section with 10 faders, so you can bring back another 10. So you've got 106 channels, all with EQ, on faders, of remix capability. So it's very powerful, particularly for the in the box guys who want to come out of the box and they want to enjoy some real sound, you know.
Well, that brings us nicely to a question I was going to ask you, John, about the in the box. Now, obviously, you are what a lot of people would deem an old school. You're the guy. You are the guy who builds these things, and it's only recently you have sort of turned your attention to in the box, because that's a very modern way. Now,
Yeah.
if later on in this video, you are going to blow everyone's mind, because we spoke last time about that low frequency. Anyway, you'll discuss that later. Remember why it is so hard to actually emulate hardware consoles. But before we get to that, can you just tell us, you have just joined up with a Italian manufacturer who are now transforming your hardware units into plugins. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I wanted to get plugins years ago, and I tried. I went to, won't mention the names, but I went to all the major players, particularly in America. And I said, I've got a magic equalizer called the high def or HDEQ. And I designed this. It's a special EQ. It's got magical properties. Not my words. They're the words of guys like Al Schmidt and others in the field, top people who said, gee, this is great. And none of those companies I went to were able to reproduce the system. And it's a shame. I wanted them to create obviously a plugin that sounded very close, if not the same, as the hardware. And it was only last February, that I was contacted by a company in Italy, Acoustics Audio, and they said, look, we have a unique sampling technology. All right, we do not create algorithms to make the circuitry. We actually sample every position of every control, and that goes into a digital format. And I said, yeah, that's well and good, but that's very complex. I know enough about digital to know that would be very CPU heavy, computer processor heavy. And they said, well, we've got other technologies and we think we can do it. I think we can create it. So I sent them a unit and I said, right, do what you like. I'll send you the circuits. I'll explain to your designers what I've done and how I've done it and why I've done it that way. And if you're interested, you create something and send it back to me. And if it's comparable with the hardware, let's run with it. Well, that's exactly what's happened. And it was last December that they said, yeah, we've done it, and we've done what you want, and we've created the graphical user interface, the GUI, to go on the front. What do you like what we've done? And I really did. I mean, it's a fabulous job, and then of course I powered it up, and I've never been in the box, so I said, look, I've got a PC here, and I'm having a hell of a job getting it to work. What do I do? Oh, that's no good. You need a Mac. so I went out and bought the currently I'm on a PowerBook Pro, and with M1's silicon chip, and it's speedy and it's nice. But then when I plugged it all up, I didn't have enough internet connection. And lo and behold, I'm not talking to you from a nice shore-based system where I've got fiber. I've had all that in the past. Currently, I'm living on a boat in the Chatham Naval Dockyard, the home of Nelson and the Victory, and or Admiral Nelson, I should say. And so I've got no way I can plug in. So I've gone in for a 4G hub, and I paid a little bit of money, and it wasn't very clever. So I've got that one on the bookshelf, but I bought a much more expensive one, which is now running, and I'm getting a good transmission rate, and so I can play with it. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to get a decent microphone. So although I own 20 odd condenser mics in my studio and probably 60 microphones of dynamic nature, I haven't got access to them, and I can't go and get them. They're in my studio in Spain. So what I've done is I've spent money on a nice condenser, which I'm using today, and so all in all, I'm pretty well equipped. And I thought, well, while I'm doing this, I might as well buy the keyboard and get into making music in the box. So I'm learning, and I'm a, I'm of Logic descent originally, but of course the Mac came with GarageBand, which I always thought was a toy. But I've got to tell you, it's so close to Logic. It's great.
It's come a long way. Now, John, you and I spoke about this last time when we just met, and you absolutely blew my mind with this. And I'm going to ask you to elaborate on this now. There are a lot of companies out there, we're not going to mention names, that are, making classic hardware modules, consoles accessible to the mass in the box market. Now, you can explain to us why it is, in your opinion, impossible to actually replicate analog circuitry, and I'll just let you run with it from there.
The problem with all digital interpretation of a system is the sampling rate, and it always has been. And I love digital. I love digital process. I think it's brilliant. I think it's great, and it should be. And there's no reason for this not to be good. My concern has always been in sampling accuracy. I think it's fair to say that the comparison between a digital recording and an analog recording system or process is all about accuracy of the comparison of the instrumentation. It's the sampling rate that we talk about, and this is great. But the problem is that a lot of customers are quite happy. A lot of users, a lot of musicians are quite happy with the poor sampling rate. Through their experience, they've had to get their head around different standards. And of course, whereas in the analog world, where we want everything in place, with the digital world, we got used to a recorded medium, the CD compact disc, and that was 16 bits at 44.1 kilohertz sampling. And at the time we thought, wow, this isn't terribly good, but it's as good as it gets. Well, when that lost its popularity, I suppose the kids were quite happy with MP3, which was nowhere near the quality of a CD. And so we have to take this on board. And in a design sense, we're in a compromised situation. So what is the ambition? Well, my ambition, being an analog man and having been designing now for 57 years, I want analog to last forever. But in the digital world, in the box, it does offer huge potential. And it's obviously there are advantages. One of the principal advantages is tuning. And you can take any instrument that's wildly out of tune and you can poke it through a system. And there's several good ones out there. I personally endorse Melodyne, which I endorsed in America when it first came out for them, because it was so incredible. But not only that, sometimes from a budget sense, you cannot afford the world's finest musicians. And so you end up having to use good friends maybe, but their accuracy of playing, their timing, etc., isn't possible to be as anywhere near as close as a sample which has been quantized and is in time and is perfectly there. You can tune it, you can make it go right. So I can see the advantage. Now, with the advent of my connections with Acoustica, I've learned that if you do go about the sampling in a specific way, that sound can be reproduced. And it wasn't until I went with them last year that I decided to release one of my trade secrets, if you like, which is a technique that I incorporate in all my designs. And a lot of electronics engineers never even heard of it. And it's a phenomenon called group delay. And a group delay is where you can add a time delay to low frequencies, to bass frequencies, in comparison with high frequencies, to the degree that when you go through a channel of mine, we're only talking 15 to 20 milliseconds, so you don't hear the bass out of time with the higher frequencies. But what you do is you separate them, and when they're separated, you've got a greatly reduced intermodulation distortion. And without getting too technical, what that means is that if you combine low frequencies with high frequencies, they tend to modulate each other, and sometimes in an unpleasant way. So how do I feel about it now? Well, yeah, I can't believe it. I'm 72 in May, and here I am talking about my new installation, which is a digital music format. I've got to prove it first and get some hit records, so I'm not sure if that's going to happen straight away. But I'm learning. I'm learning about the composition. I'm learning about the fact that my products that I've been designing now for a long, long time, 30, 35, 40 years, can all be sampled, and they can all end up in the box. And that would be nice for me. I mean, it sounds extremely mercenary, but it's nice to go to bed at night and wake up with some royalties. So
yes.
Okay. So, I mean, those are my feelings about Digi. So do I like it? Yeah, I do, if it's done right. I think any music that's composed correctly and correctly meaning in such a way that the end result is satisfactory. I mean, nothing's perfect. And there's also nothing new under the sun. Let me tell you that. I was taught that when I was about 18 by an old professor. And he said, you think you're original and you're doing stuff. Trust me, there's nothing new under the sun. It's all been done before somewhere. We just got to find it. So, you know, you have to go back to the pyramids and look at their music, and you'll find that it's very similar.
Yeah, someone's always done it. So that was fascinating. So it's really well, it's science really, the fact that the lower frequencies actually move slower than the higher frequencies.
Yes.
Okay. Although we cannot audibly hear that because it's we're talking milliseconds. However, when you compare the original hardware unit to the modeled unit, that will actually make a difference. The fact that hasn't been taken into account, is that right?
Well, yeah, if it hasn't been, whereas in the Acoustics unit, it has been. And you see lots of people have group delay in their circuits and they don't know they've got it. Now, as a designer, I know how to put it in. I also know how to take it out, and I know how to modify it. So if I'm listening to a specific channel path, if you like, a strip where I've got various circuits in the chain, mic pre, line amp, EQ, mix, buzz at the end, knowing these things, I say, okay, let's combine these effects, and then let's take a listen and see. Now, the ears tell me, and they're telling a lot of people who've now bought the Acoustics plugin, they're saying, hell, I can't believe it. The sound is so much warmer, together, tighter, and oddly, they use the magic word. They say it sounds like it's through a piece of analog, so it's very reassuring. Will digital ever replace analog? Not really, but it doesn't have to. It can run in parallel. And the next unit that I want them to sample from is one of my compressors. And my compressors have always had, every product I've ever designed, I've tried to have a novel feature. Okay, something in it that you don't find in other equipment. Now, the high def EQ that we talked about, that has a feature on every channel called detail. And detail is where the boost and cut on the level control is reduced from plus or minus 18 down to plus or minus 6 decibels. And what that does is it gives you real fine tuning, Some guys, they've never got enough, I have customers who say, no, I need more. Give me more. 18's not enough. I need lots. That's a very surgical amount of power change. Whereas with detail, a guy like Al Schmidt, he doesn't want 18 dBs of adjustment. He wants like a quarter of a dB, maybe a half a dB.
Uh-huh.
And you might think, is that ridiculous? Well, it isn't, because, Al understands that EQ, and that's another subject that I've written an article on, and we need to share with our listeners at some stage, our viewers. But there, EQ is about adjustment of harmonic content, but it's also about loudness levels and perception. And what I mean by that is that you might have a mix that you're performing, you're on the desk and you're doing the job, and you want to bring something closer to you by putting in perhaps some EQ. But in the process of doing that, you could easily have left it where it was with no EQ and push the fader up a few decibels, because you actually want that instrument louder. You don't just want it to change its harmonic content.
Yes.
And whenever I go into a studio, a strange studio, maybe a studio that I've not been in before, I walk over to their desk, the customer's desk, and if they're in the middle of a mix, it's a great thing to do. And you walk over and you take a look, and you see that the guy who's mixing it has either got very, very little EQ on, and his faders have mixed the sound. But there's an awful lot of younger engineers that perhaps haven't got the experience. I don't want to make them sound inferior. They're not. Some of them are hit record producers. But when you look down, you see they've got 10 dBs of top, 10 dBs of mid, 10 dBs of lower mid, 10 dB. And so they've got this comb filter, which is generated with all these boosts. And I often say to them, would you mind if I put those back to flat, put them to 0? Let's run the mix again. And I just push the fader up another 7 or 8 dBs. And they go, hey, that's great. And it sounds the same. Yeah, well, it's not actually sounding the same. I think it's sounding better because the original harmonic content has been preserved.
It's funny you should say that, John, because obviously when plugins first plugins are at a stage now where they are, some of the top mix engineers are using them. So that debate isn't even an issue anymore. But when they first came onto the market, you couldn't really boost high frequencies. You wanted to maybe go maximum of plus 3D. And so, but I always found that the old school engineers and indeed my mentors, they always said it is better to boost. It is better to cut than to boost. You know what I mean? Of course, now, because, with analog gear, boosting gives, we get analog distortion, which is all very pleasing and all that kind of stuff. But it is something I have found with younger engineers, especially when I'm, a lot of the guys I'm coaching, if I look at their mixes, even though I know that plugins today are on a much higher level, I never boost more than if I'm boosting 4, it's blasphemous. But they'll boost into 10, and with me, it's always about cutting rather than boosting.
Yeah, of course. And that subtractive EQ, as I call it, is a technique that I actually use in my design technique. And many people rave over the Trident Series 80 EQ as a famous musical circuit. And a lot of guys have looked at my circuit diagram, other engineers, and they've been very critical. And they've said, that's strange what you're doing. And I've said, all right, well, is that a criticism, or is that a nice thing to tell me? Is it strange? Yeah, of course it is. Because when they look in there, when the circuitry is used in a boost mode, the circuitry of my design is actually cutting at that level, but in a negative feedback loop. So the end result is to get a boost of signal. But what you've done is, by cutting it and putting it in a negative feedback loop, you've maintained the headroom all the way through.
Yes.
So when guys crank up one of my, and the Orams, of course, are the same as the Tridents. It's all the same head that designed it. When you crank up those HF levels, you say, wow, I'm up at 12, 14, 15 dBs. It's as clean, and I've still got room. Well, you have, because within the circuit, I'm not pushing the circuitry up to 15. I'm actually pushing the circuitry to minus 15. And in the negative feedback loop, the amplification is just taking care of it. So, because if you look at a curve, any curve of EQ, you can say, okay, I want bass boost. And if you look at the curve, it's up at the bottom end and it rolls down to flat. Well, if you take that same curve and don't put a boost element in there, but take it from flat and then cut the HF and the mid, you're left with the same shape. It's just in a different place. And, you can deal with that. And another feature, one of the novelties of the high def, and it's come through in the Acoustica plugin, is you've got at the low end and the high end, you've got shelves which come in and make a shelf, but you've also got bells which give you a boost. Yes. Okay. But the unique thing about my design there is that the bell actually sits on top of the shelf. So instead of having a bell and a shelf fighting each other, the bell sits on top of the shelf. So you come up for your shelf and then the bell is there on top. And that's parametric bell frequency wise. So you can move it up and down the shelf, and it doesn't have to be a boost. It can be a cut in there. So it's a different concept of EQ, And
that's the Opal EQ you're talking about.
Yes, it's called Opal. Yeah. That's an interesting story about the name, because the boss at Acoustics is Italian guy called Giancarlo, and he determines the names of all their products that they sell. And so when he gets a product that they've sampled, they name it after a color. So you've got black and you've got magenta and white and cerise and all these things. And he chose Opal. And I didn't realize, and he didn't realize, this the craziest thing. I sat looking at the name and I thought, oh, that's clever. Yeah, that's nice. Opal. Yeah. Okay. Stands for Oram Professional Audio Limited, OPAL.
That is just amazing, isn't it?
Wow. He didn't know that. Yeah. And I went online and I said, well, what a great name. and he came back and he went, what? Did I do that? Yeah, you did. You did that. So, no, it's interesting. I mean, I want to work with this company because I think they're dynamic. They're also not that well known, to be honest. I mean, I've got lots of music friends, engineer friends in America. Probably 80% of all my sales went to America. It's another reason why people don't know me in England. In my own country, I never got around to selling a huge amount of product. It was probably Rupert, and then SSL came along, of course, and they grabbed a huge amount of the market. But I think the fame for Trident was big in America because of the Series 80. I mean, at one time it was like 300 Series 80 consoles in Nashville alone. Wow. And it was because it was such a musical board. Well, naturally, I still travel when the world lets me, and I've been to Nashville several times, and I've been invited to studios, and I've been stunned. I've walked in expecting to see a SSL, a 9K or something sitting in there, and lo and behold, no, it's a Trident Series 80 that's been operational for 35 years and still churning out beautiful music. So it's a market thing.
Well, so you say Acoustica, they are the first sort of company that you found that were able to replicate your hardware, and that is why you've gone with them.
Yes. I mean, interestingly, I've been with them since a year now in terms of discussion, March of last year. I wanted to work with somebody that could do the job. It wasn't that I was being awkward. Some of these other American companies who wanted my stuff just couldn't do it. I mean, and it's difficult situation because I am an electronics engineer. I'm also a creator of sound, but I'm a musician, and my ears tell me what I need to hear, and hopefully what I need to do with the sound. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these software developers get very, very upset when you say, well, sorry, pal, but that doesn't sound a bit like the real thing. And they get angry and they go, yeah, it's the same. And you say, no, it isn't. The frequency response is the same. Well, it might be, but that's only a small proportion of an electronic design. You've got to look at phase shift. You've got to look at intermodulation, distortion, total harmonic distortion. And the one parameter that's never measured, this is why so many engineers don't know what it is group delay. And when I start doing curves, they look at you like you're making it up, but it's very provable. And with computer analysis, you can take any circuit and you can analyze it and work out what that group delay is going to be. Now, last week, as I've been with them a year, Acoustics, last week I signed a contract with them now to give them an exclusivity, because they haven't got most of the products they sell are not related to the designer at all. And I know they have Doug Fern in America, DW Fern. I know he's been working closely with them, which is nice, and me. But all the other products, I don't know. They don't have a relationship with the original company, and I don't know how they work. I don't know whether they pay royalties to everybody or whether they are allowed to borrow the circuitry and do a conversion. So I'm excited because I've got probably, I must have 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 series of consoles that I've designed over the years, complete series, which are all different in sound and facilities. And I've got 21 pieces of rack, which I've designed and created, with some had Trident on the front and some had Oram on the front. I'm not suggesting we're going to get them all sampled, but it'd be nice to have a block there. What they have agreed, Giancarlo has agreed that we won't change the names of all these pieces. Yes. So they'll all be Opal, but they'll be Opal 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever, Opal compression or whatever. So, no, I'm looking forward. I mean, they're a very go-ahead, futuristic company, for me, because I don't know this market as well as I know my analog market. But no, I'm looking forward, and I think we're going to be driving forward with this now. Coming back to a dear friend Rupert Neve, I mean, he'll be around forever because he has standard stock product. He wisely involved a new team of guys that I know he's been training up in Austin, Texas, and I think he's going to rise to the occasion again and again, because the beauty of his stuff, as I say, is it's so well engineered. But sadly, things that are so well engineered are expensive.
Yes,
and maybe they'll bring out some product that is a bit more affordable. But I know that some of his stuff has been sampled. I think Acoustics have some Neve. I know they have some SSL, but I've not had personal chance yet to hear it all. But now I've got my Mac rig set up. I'm hoping to get these things. They'll happily give me samples of everything to try, and we'll just have a listen. But I'm delighted with what they've done because they've maintained the high def property. As I say, every product, the next one's going to be compression. In my compressor design from day one, there is a switch on the front panel that gives you optical compression and solid state compression all in the same unit on a single switch. So if you're not sure which one you want to hear on a particular instrument, it's in or out, and I don't think anyone else has done that I know of. And if they have, they've copied me because I had it a long time ago. But I mean, it's a great to be with them. And I'm still building analog gear. Interestingly, the Opal product has been responsible for selling, it's not a lot, but it's sold 6 units of the hardware where guys have bought it and they've loved it, and they've said, you know what, can I try the hardware? And I've sent them one, and they said, oh yes, I've got to keep it. And there's a difference in price point, of course. Well, the hardware is not cheap, but it's not cheap when you take it apart and you look at how we build it. You know,
Yeah.
It's a serious piece of kit. So yeah, I mean, I'm delighted, you know, to be breaking ground here. I think it's good.
Well, that's great. So we will provide links at the bottom of the description of this video in the description field for all these products. It's from Acoustica. They have modeled one of John's units, which is now in a plug-in form. It's called Opal. Some more coming, hopefully, in the near future. And of course, we have your website, which is johnoram.com. And I'm just having a look at that now, John, and I see we've got...
Sorry, it's not. It's john-oram.com.
Yes, john-oram.com. I mean, I will have that come up on the screen, and it'll be the link.
Or if you put in oram.co.uk,
yeah,
it automatically puts the hyphen in. It switches across.
Sure, and I can see it's got all your it's got a history of you there, and it's got all your machines there. And as we say, you know, these things aren't cheap, but you know, quality comes at a price.
Yeah, it's all about volume. You know, in manufacture, I've owned factories. I still have shares in factories, and where we build the stuff. The problem is that the actual electronic circuitry that makes the sound, creates the sound, is usually the cost of those components is about 1/10 of the overall cost of the instrument, because metalwork is expensive, printing of metalwork, quality control knobs, quality pots, they're the bits that add the price. And the other thing, of course, is reliability. I mean, all my stuff has a 3-year warranty. And I honestly can say, you know, hand on heart, there it is. Yeah, I sell it. I sell it, and that's it. I very rarely hear from anybody. And even after 10 years, some guys ring up and they say, I've had my unit 10 years. There's nothing wrong with it. Should I recap it, or should I change this or that? And I say, no, are you happy with the sound? Yeah, it's the same as it was. Fine, leave it alone. Because I pioneered robotics in all my stuff. So the circuitry in all the Oram stuff is with surface mount technology, which is built by robots. And those robots are able to place like 32,000 components in 1 hour. And, you know, I can always take a video of the plant and put it up here if your viewers are interested.
I'm sure they will be. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a great thing because with SM, surface mount, you program the component assembly, and you program it very slowly. So it's one part, one part, one part, one part. It's all stored in computer. And when you hit the button, all those parts are suddenly, they're all done in one go. Now, if you put the wrong component in the wrong position and you build 10,000 modules, you've got 10,000 dodgy modules.
Yeah.
But if you take care, as we do, and we get it dead right, and we run, you know, a console. The thing is, it's all about volume, as I say, of sales. And analog sales are increasing. There's no question of it. It always was the pioneer product, long before digital circuitry. And when guys were coming up to me at trade shows, I'm trying to think when, sort of late 80s, 90s, and they were saying, John, what are you going to do now? Analog's dead. And I'd say, I really don't know. I'm going to have to work that one out, because I don't know what I'm going to do. It's a struggle. And naturally, I want to make sure that I'm in the market and I stay in the market. But it went downhill, and then it came back again, you know, and everything was coming back up, which was great. And it did come back up. The trade industry went through the spell. There was a time when everything was digital. The crazy thing about analog and digital is this business of, you know, how do we judge? That's the thing, you know, how do we judge these things? Because, you know, I know, you know, and I'm sure that the overall result has to satisfy customer. and that customer maybe, that's better, fine, there we are. That customer has to understand what we're doing and why. I don't like the negative attitude. I don't like the negative attitude that's taken by a lot of engineers versus the other. Back to this question of price point. If you can make 1,000 pieces of anything, you can make it much, much cheaper than building 10. But can you build that 1,000 pieces with the same quality, reliability? Yeah. And, we pay in our factory a lot more money than most electronic assembly shops because we believe that that's the way to go. We also keep our people longer, so because they're earning proper money, and their attitude is right. Let's go forward. Let's build a real quality product. So, but that's the same reason why Neve equipment is the price, and they've done a lot of things, but they haven't gone surface mount. And SSL swore they never would, and now they have. If you show me a circuit board, a PCB, I can tell you where it's been built. It's just the finishing touches, But likewise, if I said to you, right, here's a couple of cars in the car park, this one is a BMW 7 Series, and this one is a Ford Fiesta. But I'm not telling you which is which car. You got to go and drive it and come back and tell me. And you probably could, and you'd probably get it right.
Yeah.
And so there's too much snobbery, I think, in studios, and we've all got an ambition to own the finest studio, which has the finest sound at the finest ability to drive it. You've got to know what you're doing. You cannot just go and sit on a any console if you've never seen it before and start producing great mixes. It's a marriage, and you have to familiarize yourself, just as our ears have to familiarize with monitor speakers. If you gave me a blind listening test between ATC and Tannoy, I'd tell you instantly what I'm listening to. But would I prefer one over the other? Probably not, having had 45, 50 years of experience with Tannoys. and okay, they may not give you all the range that you're going to get from the ATC, but at the same time, if you know them and you know how you're going to use them, it's a natural reaction that you say, yeah, I'm happier with this mix than that one.
Yes.
And training is the whole art form, in my opinion. We've all got to give stuff the chance to prove itself. So when we're working with the Acoustica Opal, for me, I can tell the difference between that and the hardware. But for a guy who's never used the hardware, when he listens to it, he goes, wow, this is happening, So it's all about familiarity and getting it right with the customer and what the customer wants to hear. That's
right. Well, listen, John, I think that's been a great time goes so quickly. But I wanted to just do this introductory video to introduce you to the community, because I think the guys who are watching this video can see you've got a lot of knowledge. There's a lot we can talk about. I'd like to probably bring you onto one of my Zoom chats one day on my Patreon channel, and you can meet some of the geeks there if you want to come on as a special guest. But to you guys watching, I just wanted to introduce John, because he's an absolute legend in the industry. Although he's not as well known as Rupert Neve in this country, he has certainly done his time, and I'm glad to see he's still out there kicking and producing great stuff. So this is just, get used to him. You're going to be seeing him a lot on this channel. So, John, I hope you're happy with that.
I'm absolutely happy. And guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I tell you what, if you've got any questions that you want to put, I'm happy to come back up here and answer a few a few of those.
We possibly do a Q&A with you sometime, John. That'll be great.
Sure.
Like a live Q&A.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, to you guys watching, leave your comments in the description below. Let me know what any suggestions you'd like me to do with John in future, and also check out the links to john-oram.com, as well as his plugin, the Opal, which is available at Acoustica. So, John, you're going to keep us in the loop. You're going to be a regular face on this channel. I want to thank you for your time, my friend, and I look forward to seeing you again on the GeeK Talk chat.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot.
All the best, my friend.
Yeah, bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.